She smiled and said, "We decided to start a family." I replied, "With which man?" And her parents dropped their forks. The sound of silverware hitting porcelain echoed through the dining room like gunshots. Her mother's wine glass tipped, red spreading across the white tablecloth like a confession. Her father's face went from congratulatory pride to confusion to something harder in about 3 seconds. My wife Brooke sat frozen. That smile still painted on her face, but her eyes had gone wide, calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this. I'd been sitting on the truth for 6 days. 6 days since I'd opened our bedroom closet looking for my old baseball cap and found her phone wedged between 2 shoeboxes, still powered on. Notifications lighting up the screen like a slot machine. I wasn't snooping. The thing was just sitting there, forgotten, screaming for attention. The first message preview said enough. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Tell him you're working late again." Signed with a heart emoji and a name I recognized, Garrett, her CrossFit instructor, the one she'd been raving about for months, the guy who supposedly helped her find her confidence again. I'd scrolled through 4 months of messages in about 10 minutes, each one worse than the last. Plans, lies, hotel names, timestamps that matched every late night she'd blamed on her marketing job. There were photos I wish I could unsee and conversations about me that made my stomach turn. How I was boring, how I didn't understand her, how Garrett made her feel alive. The kicker was the message from 3 weeks ago where she'd written, "I think I'm late. What if it's yours?" His response, "That would be amazing, babe. We could finally be a real family." I'd screenshot everything, uploaded it to 3 different cloud accounts, and put her phone back exactly where I'd found it. Then I'd waited through her chirpy good mornings and her distracted kisses. Waited through her announcement that we should have dinner with her parents this Sunday. Something important to discuss. I'd known exactly what she was going to say before we'd even gotten in the car. Her parents, Gerald and Susan Palmer, lived in a pristine colonial in the suburbs. The kind of house where everything matched and nothing was ever out of place. They'd set the dining room table with their good china, candles flickering, a roast that probably cost more than my truck payment sitting in the middle like a centerpiece. They'd been so excited when we arrived, hugging Brooke, shaking my hand with that firm grip that said, "We raised her right." We'd made it through appetizers and small talk, Gerald asking about my job at the freight company, Susan gushing about Brooke's latest promotion. Then came the main course, and Brooke had cleared her throat, reached for my hand across the table with a squeeze that felt rehearsed, and delivered her line. "Mom, Dad, we have some wonderful news. We've been talking about it for a while now, and we decided to start a family." Susan had actually gasped with joy, her hands flying to her chest. Gerald had started to stand, probably planning to shake my hand again or open champagne. That's when I'd said it, calm as asking for the salt. "With which man?" The forks hit the plates. The wine spilled. Brooke's hand yanked away from mine like I'd burned her. "Excuse me," Gerald said, his voice dropping an octave. I looked at him, not at Brooke, because I knew if I looked at her I might lose my nerve. I asked which man she's planning to start a family with, because based on the messages between her and Garrett, her CrossFit instructor, there seems to be some confusion about paternity. If you enjoy these stories, please like and subscribe. Susan made a sound like someone had knocked the wind out of her. Brooke stood up so fast her chair scraped backward. "You went through my phone? You violated my privacy?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Your phone was sitting in our closet, lit up like a Christmas tree. I didn't have to look hard." Gerald set his napkin down very carefully, the way you handle something breakable when you're trying not to explode. "Brooke, what is he talking about?" She was shaking, whether from anger or panic I couldn't tell. "Dad, he's lying. He's been paranoid for months, accusing me of things. For months of messages." I interrupted, pulling out my own phone. "Hotels, plans, lies about working late. There's one from 3 weeks ago where she tells him she might be pregnant and asks what if it's his." I held up the screen. The preview was enough. Gerald took the phone from my hand with fingers that trembled slightly. Susan leaned over to look. I watched their faces change as they scrolled, watched them age 10 years in 30 seconds. Brooke lunged for the phone, but Gerald pulled it back, his jaw tight. "Sit down," he told her. It wasn't a suggestion. She sat. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The candles flickered. The roast sat there getting cold. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. "Is this real?" Susan finally whispered. Her voice was so small, so broken. Brooke opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like you've been having an affair," Gerald said flatly. "It looks like you're pregnant and you don't know who the father is. It looks like you were going to lie to your husband and possibly to us." "I was confused," Brooke said. And now she was crying. Real tears, mascara starting to run. "Things with us have been hard. He's always working, never home. I felt alone." "I work 40 hours a week," I said. My voice still sounded weirdly calm. "Same schedule I've had since we got married. You're the one who started staying late, going to early morning classes, girls' weekends that your friends never seem to know about." Susan stood up abruptly and left the room. We could hear her in the kitchen, the sound of cabinets opening and closing, water running. Gerald kept scrolling through the messages, his face getting harder with each swipe. "How long?" he asked. Brooke didn't answer. "How long?" His voice cracked like a whip. "For months," I said. "That I can prove. Could be longer." Gerald set the phone down very carefully, like it might explode. He looked at his daughter. This man who'd walked her down the aisle 2 years ago, who'd given the toast about finding true love, who'd cried during our first dance. "Get out of my house," he said quietly. "Daddy?" I said, "Get out." His voice was shaking now. "You lied to us. You lied to him. You were going to pass off another man's child as his. I don't know who you are right now, but you're not the daughter I raised." Brooke looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw the moment she realized I wasn't going to save her, that I wasn't going to stand up and say it was a misunderstanding, that we'd work it out. "Please," she whispered. I stood up, pulled the car keys from my pocket, and set them on the table in front of her. "You can drive yourself wherever you're going. I'm getting a ride." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Call Garrett," I said. "I'm sure he'll take care of his real family." I walked out of that dining room, through the pristine living room with its matching furniture and family photos that now felt like lies, out the front door into the cold November air. I called an Uber from the driveway and waited under the porch light, watching through the window as Gerald stood up, as Brooke sobbed into her hands, as Susan came back into the room with her phone pressed to her ear, probably calling her sister or her pastor or whoever you call when your daughter's life implodes at Sunday dinner. The Uber driver didn't ask why I was leaving a nice house in the suburbs on a Sunday night. I gave him my address and spent the 20-minute ride staring out the window, watching streetlights blur past, feeling nothing and everything at once. When I got home, the house was dark and quiet. Our house, except it didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt like mine, like it should have been all along. I turned on the lights, made coffee I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened a new browser tab and typed, "Divorce attorneys near me." Brooke didn't come home that night, or the next. She texted Tuesday morning, a long rambling message about how we needed to talk, how she'd made mistakes but so had I, how relationships take work, how we owed it to ourselves to try counseling. I didn't respond. Wednesday, her mother called. I answered because Susan had always been kind to me, had welcomed me into their family like I mattered. "I'm sorry," she said, and she was crying. "I'm so sorry. We didn't raise her to be this person." "I know," I said. "I don't blame you. Gerald wants you to know that whatever you need, character witness, testimony, anything legal, will support you." What she did was unforgivable. I had to sit down. "You'd testify against your own daughter?" Susan was quiet for a moment. "I'd testify for the truth," she said. "And for the young man who's been nothing but good to her, who worked extra shifts to help with her student loans, who showed up to every family dinner with flowers. You deserved better than what she gave you." Thursday, I met with an attorney, a woman named Patricia Chun who'd been recommended by 3 different reviews. She looked at the screenshots, listened to the timeline, and nodded. "Indiana is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can affect asset division and spousal support. With this evidence, you're in a strong position. She might be pregnant, I said. Patricia didn't blink. If she is, we'll require a paternity test before any child support discussions. If the child isn't yours, you have no obligation. Friday, Brooke showed up at the house while I was at work. I knew because my neighbor texted me a photo of her car in the driveway. When I got home, I found a letter on the kitchen counter, 3 pages of handwritten apology, explanation, blame shifting, and begging. She'd underlined certain phrases, circled others, like she was trying to emphasize the parts she thought would work on me. I never meant for it to happen. You pushed me away. We can fix this if you just give me a chance. I'm not even sure I'm pregnant. The test could be wrong. I read it once, then took a photo and sent it to my attorney. Then I threw it away. Saturday, I changed the locks. Sunday, exactly 1 week after the dinner, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 12 from Brooke, 3 from a number I didn't recognize, 2 from Susan. I called Susan back first. He left her, she said without preamble. Garrett. She told him she was pregnant and going to leave you, and he said he wasn't ready to be a father, that it was fun, but he thought she understood it wasn't serious. I closed my eyes. Is she okay? Does it matter? Susan's voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. She's staying with her sister. Margot called me this morning, said Brooke's been crying for 2 days straight. The pregnancy test was positive. She wants to take a paternity test. She can send the request through my attorney, I said. I'm not discussing this directly anymore. Good, Susan said firmly. Don't let her manipulate you. She's good at that. I'm realizing now how good she's always been at that. The paternity test took 3 weeks. Brooke had to wait until she was far enough along for the non-invasive blood test. I didn't see her during that time, didn't speak to her, communicated only through Patricia. She tried everything, showing up at my work, sending mutual friends to talk to me, creating a new Instagram account to message me when I blocked her old one, writing letters, having Margot call and tell me how depressed she was, how she'd made a mistake, how everyone deserves a second chance. I didn't budge, not because I was strong, because every time I thought about wavering, I remembered that dining room, that smile. We decided to start a family. The royal we that was supposed to include me but never really did. The results came back on a Thursday. Patricia called me at lunch. It's not yours, she said. The report is conclusive. Do you want me to send you a copy? No, I said. Just file it with the divorce papers. Already done. We should have a court date within 6 weeks. Given the circumstances, this should be straightforward. It was. Brooke didn't contest. She signed everything, took her personal belongings in a single trip while I was at work, left her key on the counter with a note I didn't read. The divorce was final 3 days before Christmas. I spent the holiday with my parents, who'd known the whole story and hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. My mom kept saying I deserved better. My dad just kept shaking his head and refilling my coffee. Gerald and Susan sent a card. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note. This isn't charity. This is an apology for what our daughter put you through. Use it however you need to start fresh. You'll always be welcome in our home. I cried reading that. Actually cried. Something I hadn't let myself do through the whole thing. On New Year's Eve, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. This is Margot. I know you don't want to hear from any of us and I understand. I just thought you should know Brooke had the baby yesterday. A boy. Garrett won't return her calls. She's living with my parents now. You made the right choice walking away. What she did to you was unforgivable. I hope you find someone who deserves you. I stared at that message for a long time. Thought about a little boy who'd grow up with a mother who'd lied, a father who'd abandoned him, grandparents trying to hold together pieces of something shattered. I felt sorry for that kid, but I didn't feel responsible for him. I deleted the message and didn't respond. 3 months later, I ran into Susan at the grocery store. She saw me first, hesitated, then walked over with her cart. How are you? She asked. Getting there, I said honestly. Day by day. She nodded. Gerald and I separated from Brooke. Temporarily. We're helping with the baby financially, but we told her she needs to figure out her life. She's in therapy now. Too little too late, probably. I hope it helps, I said. And I meant it. Not for Brooke. For that kid. Susan reached out and squeezed my arm. You deserved so much better than what she gave you. I know, I said. I'm starting to believe it. 6 months after the divorce, I went on my first date. Her name was Angela, a teacher I'd met through a friend. She asked about my previous marriage on the second date, and I told her the truth, all of it. I waited for her to make excuses and leave. Instead, she said, "That must have taken incredible strength, to walk away at that dinner instead of making a scene or trying to fix something that broken." I didn't feel strong, I admitted. I felt destroyed. Strength isn't not feeling destroyed, she said. Strength is feeling destroyed and still choosing your own dignity. We're taking it slow. I'm not ready to trust completely yet. Maybe I won't be for a while. But I'm learning that Sunday dinner, that moment when the forks dropped, wasn't the end of my story. It was just the end of a chapter one should have closed sooner. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is just the truth catching up with a lie you've been living. And sometimes, when everything falls apart at a family dinner, you realize you're not losing anything real. You're just finally seeing what was never there to begin with. The roast got cold that night. The candles burned down. The wine stain never came out of that white tablecloth. But I walked out of that house with something more valuable than a marriage built on lies. I walked out with my self-respect. And that, it turns out, is the only thing I really needed to start over. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.